So we open a shop, there's gold and diamonds, and we say, if you know how to wear them, the bracelet and the necklace, and I'll give them to you. Because you can't afford them, so I'll give them to you. So that's Mahaprabhu's movement. I'm not going to find anyone that can buy it, and I have all this gold, and beautiful jewelry, and I have diamond rings, and diamond necklaces. And we are, and Mahaprabhu was saying, I have like this surplus of gold and diamonds. I don't know what to do with it. Does anybody want it? Come, I'll give it to you. That's basically, I have this surplus of love of Krishna, and so anybody want it, I'll give it to you. It's Kali Yuga, you can't afford it. So what am I going to do with it? I have it, you can't afford it. Come on to my store. If you know how to wear it, I'll give it to you. That's Mahaprabhu's movement. Yes? So are we fortunate? Now, that kind of mercy, it is said, Chiradadattam Nijagupta Vitam, this confidential treasury, it's been hidden, never given for Chirad, a very long time. So long, basically, Shastra says, it's never given before. But it's so long you can't remember when it was given before. So, never given before sounds more dramatic than not given in a long time, right? So let's just say, it's never given before, and we are all getting it. So that's very special. Yes? But what's even more special is that this mercy that's never been given or seen before, Namo Mahavandhanaya, that Rupa Goswami says, you're the most magnanimous, Lord Nityananda is more merciful than Lord Chaitanya. So that mercy that Lord Chaitanya is giving, it manifests through Lord Nityananda. So how does it work? It's amazing how it works. And you've probably thought of this before, and it's astonishing. Why would you give diamonds and gold to people in a slum? Their clothes are pretty ragged, isn't it? You know, they can't afford nice clothes. They're wearing old clothes. They're probably not able to get them that clean. There may be holes in the clothes. Why would you give diamonds and gold to them? It doesn't make sense. So, have you ever thought why Mahaprabhu would wait for Kali Yuga and then pull out in Kali Yuga something he never gave even in Satya Yuga? Have you ever thought about it? Satya Yuga, prema is not given in the mood of the residents of Braja. In Treta, Dwapara Yuga, it's not given. It's only given in Kali Yuga. And so the highest thing is given to the people who are the least qualified to get it. So naturally, one would think, why? Because it doesn't make sense. And you know the answer is? Because he wanted to. That's the answer. Whenever you ask, why does Krishna do something? That's the answer. Because he feels like it. That's why he does it. It is said that Krishna does things by his own sweet will. That's why he does things, by his own sweet will. Why did he do that? Because he felt like it. And Krishna's own sweet will is beautiful for everybody. So why did Mahaprabhu decide to give mercy to the people in the slums? Why did he decide to give diamonds and gold to people in the slum? Because he felt like it? Do you need another reason? Do you need another explanation? Why did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta tell Srila Prabhupada to come to America? The outcasts, the Malechas, the Yavanas, the hub, the Mecca of materialism. Why? Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his compassion was transferred to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. That compassion transferred to Prabhupada. There's no reason. It's just compassion they want. So Mahaprabhu, he's overcome with compassion and he wants to bless us. And Nityananda Prabhu has that position where he gives his compassion to the lowest of the low. Mahaprabhu gave his compassion, but it was reserved for the scholars, the intellectuals. And he gave everyone else to Nityananda Prabhu. So Nityananda Prabhu is the full manifestation of mercy. And sometimes the Maha Mantra is compared to a circle. So the circle, it goes all the way to the earth, and it goes all the way to the spiritual world. And the Gayatri Mantra is compared to a circle inside the circle. It doesn't go as high and doesn't go as low. So what does it mean? It means that when the circle goes all the way to the earth or all the way down, that means it picks up everybody without qualification. And the circle goes all the way higher than the Gayatri, goes to the spiritual world. Where the Gayatri, there's some qualification, so it starts higher, but it doesn't take you all the way. So the Maha Mantra, Prabhupada said, that Maha Mantra initiation is really all you need. If you don't get Gayatri, you won't die. You can still be Krishna conscious. Because the Maha Mantra brings the lowest people to the highest position. So Nityananda, his service was to go to the lowest people. And that's why the transcendental Leela of Jagai and Madai were there, because they were the lowest, at least at that time in history, they were the lowest on the planet. You couldn't find anybody worse than them. There actually were people worse than Jagai and Madai, but not at that time. So, Nityananda's mercy extends down to the lowest and takes people to the highest. And Jagai and Madai are manifestations of the lowest who went to the highest. You know, what's so amazing about Jagai and Madai is that everybody, well, it's not amazing that everyone hated them. Everyone hated them. Naturally, everyone hated them. They were the mafia of the area. They were worse than mafia. You know, mafia, you know, some, I don't know, mafioso people, but I'm sure a lot of them are nice people. They take care of their kids, you know, they're not just drinking all day, and, you know, they dress nice and they're polite, you know, they just do illegal things. Jagai and Madai weren't like that. They weren't nice. They weren't nice mafia. They were just, you know, you get in their way, you're in trouble, you know. No mercy for you. And so maybe you know this story. It's such a nice story. And it exemplifies how high Jagai and Madai went by the mercy. And it exemplifies how great is this mercy that Jagai and Madai could go so high. So obviously Jagai and Madai felt really bad when after they were saved. They're very repentant. You could imagine, right? They've killed people, they've raped people, just looted people. And now they become devotees, and now they have this in their memory, what they did. You could imagine how they felt. They wanted to do something to pay back, to repent. So they built a ghat, and they said, at least we can build a ghat. Yes? We'll build a ghat, people can bathe there, and that way we'll pay back. You remember the story of the snake who became a devotee? He was a disciple of Narada Muni. Anyway, if you don't know the story, a snake became a devotee. Don't try to figure it out, but he did. Actually, he was a devotee in his last life. And somehow or other in his next life, he had the opportunity to go back to Godhead in his last life. Narada Muni gave it to him. He didn't take it. Somehow or other he took birth. I'm not sure why. Maybe somebody knows why he took birth as a snake. But anyway, he was a disciple as a snake. And everyone in the village found out that the snake became a devotee. So now, if the snake's a devotee, he's not going to bite. So we can harass the snake. So all the kids are like, let's harass the rattlesnake, or whatever kind of snake it was, poisonous. Let's harass him because he's not going to bite. You know, like that. So he was going crazy, couldn't deal with it. And Narada Muni said, raise your fangs and make it look like you're going to bite, but don't bite. Right? So nobody was afraid of the snake because it couldn't bite. They knew he wouldn't bite. And the same thing happened with Jagai and Madai. Everybody knew they become devotees, so whatever we do to them, they won't retaliate. We can do whatever we could get back at them now, and they're devotees, and devotees do not retaliate. First canto, 18th chapter, text 48 says you can kill a devotee and he won't retaliate. What to speak of criticize him or disrupt him or disturb him. You could even kill him and he won't retaliate. That is the power, Prabhupada. That is the power of a devotee. He won't even retaliate. Isn't that amazing? So the people thought, here's our chance. Jagai and Madai are devotees. We can harass them like they harassed us. And that's what people did. Jagai and Madai would be at the ghat. Please come to my ghat. If you go to Mayapur, you can ask me and I'll show you where the ghat is. It's 5 minutes from where I live. You walk down the road where the Ganga used to be. It's now a Parikrama Marg in Mayapur, and right there there's a sign and a little temple. So this is Jagai Madai Ghat. Now it's a field. You can see it. And there they stood, please come to my ghat. And people, it's, you Jagai, you Madai, you the excrement of the universe. I hate you. And they spit on them. I mean, what could be worse than spitting on someone? I guess you could urinate on them. But you know, spitting, urinating, whatever it is you're going to do, what could be worse? That's so amazing. Jagai and Madai said, thank you, I deserve this. Right? So, how do we understand Mahaprabhu's mercy? That the lowest, even amongst mafia, they would probably be rejected as like too despicable to associate with. They were like worse than lower than low. And now they've come to this point where they're being spit on and they're saying, I deserve it. So that's the manifestation of Nityananda's mercy and Mahaprabhu's mercy as it extends down to Jagai and Madai. We can see that. Weird. Still. Is the sound coming now? Krishna, yes? This is so weird. I can't understand. Yes? No? Maybe? You're talking about Facebook. Yeah. If it doesn't come now, it's a Facebook problem. And I have to restart it. Can somebody turn on their Facebook? Go to Mahatma Das? It's coming. That's so weird. It's like 363 days a year it works, and 2 days it doesn't, and it's the same thing. Yeah. Krishna just does that just because he likes to have fun with me. He's like, oh, you think you're tolerant? You preach about tolerance? Okay, I'm gonna harass you today. I'm gonna put demons inside your recorder, and then you're not going to hear anything. All right. So, one thing we should understand from the mercy that Nityananda gives, and the mercy that Mahaprabhu gives, is that where is it most condensed? How do you get it in the most condensed form? You get it through the Mahamantra. That's where it comes. So Mahaprabhu comes to give mercy. Nityananda is his agent. That mercy is put into the Mahamantra. That's where you get it. But Nityananda, he didn't tell people to chant Hare Krishna. He told them to chant, Gauranga, Gauranga. He knew that's where the mercy lies. It lies in the name of Gauranga. So he would go door to door, bow down at people's feet and say, please chant the name of Gauranga. So of course, this is Kali Yuga, so Gauranga is his Lord. But we understand that all the mercy that Mahaprabhu wants to give, he put in the holy name. That's where you get it in the most condensed way. It's like the para of mercy. It's so thick. And if you chant Hare Krishna in Dwapara Yuga or Treta Yuga or Satya Yuga, it's good, but you don't get prema. But if you chant the Maha Mantra in Kali Yuga, you get prema. So all that mercy of Mahaprabhu to give prema, it's in the holy name. So when we say Mahaprabhu is giving love of God freely, how is he giving it? He's giving it through the Maha Mantra. Yes? Isn't it a shame if we chant with offense and we can't access the mercy that's never been given before? Chiradadatam nijagupta vitam. The mercy that's never been given before, we can't access it because we commit offense. What could be worse than that? Prabhupada once said, I was in the lecture, this is probably 1972. How many of you were alive in 1972? Raise your hand. You weren't alive in 72, were you? When were you born? Oh, in another body. Yeah, of course. But most of you were not alive in 1972. 1972 means 47 years and older. If you're 47 or older, I just wanted to see how old you were. That's why I asked you. So now I know who's 47 and older. So Prabhupada said, we are the most unfortunate. If you join ISKCON, you become devotees, you become the most fortunate. And if you leave and you give up the mercy, you become more unfortunate than the people who never got the mercy. You become the most unfortunate. So we could use this statement as an example that I have the Maha Mantra, and if I don't take it properly, if I commit aparad or I just somehow I forget to chant, I forgot to chant today. Oh, the day is over, I forgot to chant. We do things like this, then actually we're the most unfortunate. Even more so, right? So you're living in the slum, the gold shop is open, the diamonds and gold are being given freely. Oh, I don't have time to go. Go. More unfortunate, right? You become more unfortunate now because you have the opportunity. So I just want to speak a little bit about the topic of mercy because Nityananda Prabhu is the one through whom mercy comes in the most powerful way. And only this mercy of Nityananda could possibly save people in Kali Yuga. Without this level of mercy, there is basically no hope for becoming very elevated spiritually. So I want to tell you something that is maybe one of the most amazing things, amongst the most amazing things I've ever heard. And I'll tell you next time I come here. Is that okay? Would you like to hear something? That's one of the most I want to see if you're still awake. Would you like to hear something that's one of the most amazing things that I've ever heard? Okay. You know, sometimes you give a class and you wonder if devotees are still breathing. They're kind of like... But actually, you later realize they're just dreaming about prasadam and they're hungry. And that's why they're not so responsive. So, Prabhupada comes to New York. You all know the story, but you don't really know how degraded it was because you, as Indians, probably can't imagine that level of degradation. But it was very bad. Very low. No vegetarians. These people that Prabhupada were preaching to were smoking ganja, taking LSD, hashish, and so forth. A lot of them every day. A lot of them never stopped, just all day, just smoking. Take a bath once in a while. Change their clothes once in a while. Sex, almost as often as eating, they would have sex. Not with their wife. Just some girl or guy they'd meet. I mean, it was very bad. It was animalistic. So how can you give this spotless jewel of prema bhakti to those people? It's inconceivable, unimaginable. How they'll understand it, how they'll accept it, what to speak of actually practice it without just falling on their face. Isn't it? Achintya. It is achintya. So, one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers said something. This is the amazing thing that he said. First he said, Srila Prabhupada is Shakti Vaishavatar because he has to have the Shakti. He has to have Shakti to deliver these people. It can't happen without divine Shakti. And then he said, but consider whose Shakti it was. Because when you say Shaktavesh, but whose Shakti is it? If you're going to deliver the hippies in New York, whose Shakti do you need? You need Nityananda Shakti. No other Shakti is going to do it, right? Ramchandra Shakti won't work. Vishnu, Narayan Shakti won't work. You need Nityananda Shakti. So he said, Srila Prabhupada is Shakti Vaishavatar. He is the manifestation of Nityananda's Shakti. And then he said the amazing thing. And I hope you don't all faint when I tell you this, because I don't want to be responsible for any medical damage I've created. He said, because Prabhupada embodied Nityananda Shakti, what Prabhupada achieved was exactly what Nityananda Prabhu would have achieved if he came personally. It was no different. Nityananda Prabhu would not have achieved anything greater or different than what Prabhupada achieved, because Prabhupada fully embodied Nityananda's mercy. Hare Krishna. Is that amazing? Non-different. Now, my dear ladies and gentlemen, you have received that mercy. And 1967, the Hare Krishna movement had been 2 years. There was nobody in the movement that had heard about Krishna before Prabhupada came. There was no one in the movement who 2 years prior had not been eating meat, taking drugs, and having illicit sex. And in 1967, Prabhupada says, my dear boys and girls, you will have to become spiritual masters. I have great confidence in you. How is that possible? What is Prabhupada thinking? You might think, was Prabhupada tired that day? Was he hungry? Was he not thinking clearly? This is 2 years in the movement, and he's saying you'll have to become spiritual masters. Even today, with so many of you present here who have so much experience in bhakti, if I sit down and I say, you will all have to become spiritual masters, you'll all think, he's not talking to me. Yes? It won't make sense. So, if it doesn't make sense to you, and you've been practicing and you're born in India, and maybe you come from Vaishnava families, what was Prabhupada thinking? We can understand that Prabhupada knew and had faith that the mercy of Nityananda can do anything, that you can take a hippie, put the mercy of Nityananda, Shaktivesh avatar, and that hippie who Prabhupada saved could go to London and preach to the Beatles and make them Krishna conscious and spread the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra around the world. Yes? That's what happened. That's the manifestation of Nityananda's mercy. So, the real point for us is to understand that that mercy is being given to us, and we can embody that mercy, and therefore we, even though we're not qualified, we can give that mercy to others. I joined ISKCON in 1969. There were maybe a few hundred of us and maybe 10 temples. Somehow or other, before Prabhupada left, there were 5,000 of us, mostly brahmacharis, and there were 108 temples, plus schools and farms. How did we do that? What qualification did we have to do that? Most of us neither had material or spiritual qualification. What was the qualification? It was the Nityananda Kripa. That's it. We took it. And we gave it to other people, and it worked. So, if your Guru Maharaj ever says one day to you, you will have to be Guru, don't look at the floor and say, not me. No way in a million yugas can that happen. That is a humble way of accepting it. But once you process the real essence, you'll realize that in your humility, you can get this kripa and give it to others. And watch this kripa do amazing things in people's lives. As we said, I think maybe us as Americans have more faith because we saw people go from a lower state. You're not dealing with people who are so low yet. Most of the people that are in India that are that low are probably not really interested. But in America, you get people that low who are interested. So we get to see these amazing transformations that maybe you don't see so often. So we have experience of that kripa. Or you say krupa in your language? Krupa? Krupa. So we have experience of that in our own lives and in the lives of the people we've preached to. So, therefore we have faith in Nityananda's mercy. Because we see it. And we it's like, let's say I gave you the cure for cancer. And I said, go out and find people who have cancer and cure them. And you'd say, I can't do that, I'm not a doctor. No, it doesn't matter, it's just a little pill, sneak in the cancer ward in the hospital at midnight and go and put it on everyone's tongue. Somehow or other, if they just get this medicine on their tongue, it's gone. Their cancer will be gone. They'll wake up cancer-free, right? You don't have to be a doctor. You just have to get in the hospital and get it on their tongue. So it's the same way for us. You don't have to be a great scholar, a great this or that, but if you can get the mercy of Nityananda in the hands of people, it will act in spite of your own lack of qualification. That's what Prabhupada saw. That's what Prabhupada believed. And therefore, Prabhupada, I don't know if you realize this, but Prabhupada was having temples opened by devotees who've been in the movement 6 months. 6 months ago, who knows what they were doing? We don't even want to discuss what they were doing. And 6 months later, you go to this country, you go to this city, and they're opening a temple, and there's a morning program, regular sadhana, and people are becoming devotees. How does that happen? 6 months. 6 months ago, they were a hippie in San Francisco doing who knows what. And now they're a temple president of ISKCON. And books are being distributed, deities are being installed, people are joining. How is that possible? By the qualification of that person? No, it's the mercy of Nityananda. And because Prabhupada had faith in that mercy, he could send somebody who he felt was sincere enough to follow his instruction, knowing that if you follow my instruction, the people you preach to will get the mercy, and that mercy will act. And so you're just delivering the pill. Nityananda Kripa. Here, would you like some Nityananda Kripa? Yeah, and then I give it to you. And so then we invite these people, we give them Nityananda Kripa, and then we do kirtan, and all these people off the street are dancing and chanting like they've been devotees their whole life. One of the most amazing things that I saw, it's another amazing thing, and I hope you think it's amazing. It may take time before it settles in. But if you went to ISKCON temple in 1967 or 1968, 1969, 1970, you would see deities, you would see pujaris, you would see brahmins, you would see kirtan. You would see Bhagavatam class, Gita class, people chanting shlokas, chanting mantras, wearing tilak kunti, right? The one thing you wouldn't know is at that juncture in ISKCON, the average duration of a devotee's devotional service was about 12 months. So you come into this temple, and the pujari who's doing, he's been a devotee about, actually the head pujari in the temple I joined wasn't even initiated. We needed a head pujari, and 3 months after he joined, he became the head pujari. So you even had a head pujari at 3 months. So you'd come into this temple, and you'd see these people, and you'd think, oh, they must have been devotees their whole life. They're so enthusiastic. They already know so many shlokas. They do deity worship nicely. They do kirtan nicely. That was the power of that mercy. That it was turning people 180 degrees so quick that a few months later, you'd see them, and you'd have no idea that they joined 3 months earlier. You would have no idea. And anytime you look at a video of ISKCON 1970, 69, 68, just understand the average person in that video has probably not been a devotee even 1 year, and they're probably not over 20 years old. And look at their faces, and look at their kirtans, and look at their bhakti. It doesn't make sense. It looks like they've been devotees for lifetimes. Actually, they were devotees for lifetimes, but that's another thing. That's another story for another time. And you see all this dedication and devotion and deity worship and everything, and realization, deep realization, and they're all writing articles for BTG and expressing their understanding. That's Nityananda's mercy. It just transforms somebody really quick. High speed. What do they call that when you learn something really quickly? There's a name for it? I forget. Anyway, crash course or something like bhakti crash course. It's just that's a definite manifestation of Prabhupada's mercy. And then, of course, the culmination of that mercy is those hippies, those same people that he picked up off the street. A lot of them are your spiritual master, or they are the spiritual masters of ISKCON. So that's like, okay, if you really want to believe in Nityananda's mercy, that's it, right? All the way up to becoming guru, right? So now for us, one thing we understand, that our spiritual advancement is all due to the mercy of Guru and Krishna, and the Guru's mercy is a manifestation of Nityananda's mercy because he's the Adi Guru. So the mercy he gives, samsharadava nalalila loka, it's just being rained upon you through your Guru. So the Guru is giving you that mercy. We are products of mercy. Whatever advancement we make, we are, it's just because of the mercy we've been given. It's not our own strength. We always have to remember that, because if we don't remember that, two problems. First problem, we'll become proud and we'll think it's my strength. Second problem, we could become weak and lax, thinking, oh, this is easy. When the mercy's taken away, it's like that story of that yogi that Bhaktivinoda Thakur chastised, and He had big hair and he went to jail, and somebody in jail was able to shave his hair, and as soon as his head was shaved, he fell down. It's like all his Shakti was in his hair. So it's like all our Shakti is in the mercy. You take that and we're just like we're nothing. We're just go back to where you were before you were a devotee. So you have to remember that. Don't become proud of it. And understand, therefore, basically our existence as a devotee is how to maintain and increase the mercy we get. Because if we don't get it every day, we're going to be in trouble. And how to get more of it. And the more we get, the better we'll be. Not because we're better, but because the mercy is doing everything. And all we have to do is become expert at getting the mercy. That's the whole secret of Krishna consciousness. Just how do I get the mercy? So as we said, you get the mercy if you chant good rounds. You'll get a lot of mercy. Yes? You'll get a lot of mercy. There's a huge difference between good rounds and bad rounds. Like tons of mercy difference. You will get a lot of mercy if you share Krishna consciousness with others. It'll fall down on your head in buckets. Because Krishna is so pleased when you give Krishna to others. When you have good sadhana, you get mercy. When you get along well with the devotees, you get mercy. So we need to be expert at getting this mercy. And if you get this mercy, you become the empowerment. You become the Shaktivesh of Nityananda. And then you can give that mercy to others. And when people will see you, they'll see, oh, something, some mercy, something. You won't look normal to them. They'll see some Shakti is there. So that's what I wanted to say. And thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please ask. Yes. We need a microphone? Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for
You're welcome.
when Srila Prabhupada was there on the planet, physically, so that time we could see that Krishna was expanding very fast. Over the period when Prabhupada left the planet physically, then we could see that okay, there are some concerns. And now we again back to see that.
So when Prabhupada was here, it was going up. When he left, it started going down. And now
we feel that again it is.
Now it's going up or down?
That's what it's what we hear from seniors that is again picking up, and probably because now Prabhupada is in the center, is from.
Oh, why is it picking up again?
Because like again Prabhupada is in the center. GBC is coming with the rules that Srila Prabhupada is the founder, so here preeminent founder.
Yeah.
So is that the good correct understanding?
He's saying, is the reason things are expanding because Prabhupada is more in the center? Is Prabhupada still, is it because Prabhupada, that's part of it, definitely part of it. Well, what does it mean, Prabhupada's in the center? That's another question. That's a whole other class, or classes. Has Sareshwara Prabhu ever come here? He's coming to, actually he's coming to Bangalore. He's going to be doing a Founder Acharya course. Yes? That will answer your question. You should all take that course. It's a course about Prabhupada's position as your guru, as the Founder Acharya, what that means, your relationship with Prabhupada. That's what it means to put Prabhupada in the center, to understand your relationship with him, your connection with him, his connection with ISKCON, his connection with your guru and all the other gurus in the GBC. I would say there are many factors, but you could say that was the central factor. One of the things that happened, I don't know if this is going to happen to you when your spiritual master leaves, But one of the things that happened when Prabhupada left is we realized there were things that he said that we thought we understood that we didn't understand, because in the context of practically applying them in his absence, we became clearly aware that we didn't understand it as deeply as we needed to. It's kind of like, let's say you work for your father. You're like the vice president of the company, and you're working for your father, and everything is going well. And then he dies, and now you have to run the company. And there are little details you didn't pay attention to because you didn't have to, because he did it. So that's what happened to us. We just took things for granted, that this is how it is, but then when it moved into our hands and we had to make decisions that Prabhupada were making, or we had to clarify things that we thought we understood, we started to realize we didn't actually understand everything that clearly. And that created a little bit of confusion. It's like we had to go over, what does Prabhupada mean? And there were differences, different ideas, and when you have differences, it diffuses energy. Whereas when Prabhupada was here, he was very focused. He would just say, this is how it is, and so it's a dynamic that probably couldn't be avoided. And it may happen to you when your guru goes, and then different godbrothers will say, Guru Maharaj said this, no, but he said that, and he meant this. So that's just going to be there naturally. And how well you deal with it will affect you in a positive or negative way. And this is historically a problem with religion. When a founder leaves, then then you're looking in hindsight, what did he teach, what did he want, and there's differing opinions. He wanted this, no he didn't, that was just what he wanted in 1967, he didn't want it for 2018, and maybe that's true, maybe that's not, so these are the challenges we had. And the movement changed a lot. This is another thing. I don't know if this is going to happen to you, but I'm just telling you this is what happened to us. In case it does happen to you, you can better deal with it. The movement changed a lot. Because the movement was one way when Prabhupada was here, it was a different way after he left. And so some people did not stay in ISKCON because the movement changed so much. It was like they felt it was like a different movement. So obviously things are a certain way when your Guru Maharaj is here, and when he goes, it's going to be a little different. So that's a challenge. So, and then when Prabhupada was here, because he had given so many instructions, it's easy to focus on different instructions, but Prabhupada would kind of keep us focused on main instructions, right? So, we have so many instructions from Prabhupada, but he would keep us very focused on the preaching, on the book distribution, on the expansion, on the sadhana, rising early, and he would always preach about it, so it kept that focus. But when he was gone, there's not that living person who just keeps saying it. So now, well, he said that 10 years ago. And you can kind of think, well, maybe it's not important now. I mean, obviously it's important now, but that thinking was there. You see the different dynamic, like I come here and I can preach something, right? That's important. And you go, oh, that's important. Let's say I preach book distribution, or I preach about how important it is to have good sadhana, or to do college preaching, or to take more responsibility. And so then now that's on the forefront of your mind. And I come back every month and I preach that. And so Prabhupada's traveling around the world and he's preaching certain things, and we're hearing what he's preaching. So it's on the forefront of our mind. Then he leaves. The dynamics change. Those are just recordings now. And some devotees will keep that in the forefront, and some it'll go back, and some it'll just disappear. So that's a dynamic you're all going to have to deal with. Your Guru Maharaj is here, he's preaching something, it becomes important for you. He goes, you don't hear the preaching anymore if you don't turn on the lecture. Or, well, that was 2018, now you're hearing the lecture in 2038. Would he actually say the same thing? India's different, it's changed. some disciples arguing one side or the other. He wouldn't change, he would change. I just spoke to a godbrother. It's such an interesting topic. I spoke to a godbrother. He's been in Italy for 35 years. And in the 80s in Italy, their main Sankirtan was going door to door to homes, offices, factories, enterprises, and selling sets of books to factory owners, business owners. And many, many, many devotees were doing it. And then they would get the names of these people, they would follow up, they would cultivate, they would have festivals where they'd meet people on the street, large numbers, follow, cultivate. They had a radio station through the whole country, huge book distribution, and making many, many, many devotees. So they bought this huge property, like 300 acres, and it was a house of Machiavelli's house, like 25 rooms, like this huge, it's like a palace, kind of mansion palace. And they had 200 or 300 devotees living there. Now they have 15 devotees living there. And I was talking to my godbrother, he said, I cannot go door to door anymore because there are so many foreigners come in the country. There's so much crime, no one will even open the door. And he said, now, the way the culture is, no one will move in an ashram. 300 devotees, this is just one temple. 300 devotees in this one temple. And now, even a devotee initiated 64 rounds, who's, let's say, inherited enough money they don't have to work, still, they won't even move in a temple. So it's a different time, a different culture. So you hear a lecture of Prabhupada saying, preach, make more devotees, more brahmacharis. And now you're in a culture where no one will move in the temple. So you have to adjust. And maybe it's, no, we're preaching wrong. We can make brahmacharis. No, we have to preach congregationally. They're not joining. So these dynamics are going to be there. It's a reality. So these are what happens in the wake of when the guru leaves and culture changes. And you have to start making decisions and figuring out what you want to do, what's the new strategy, if there is a new strategy. So that dissipated a lot of energy. And I think what happened later on is we started to realize where the dissipation of energy was and where the focus needed to be. And then there's a certain point where book distribution increased, devotee making increased, and so on. So we understood things more clearly, kind of by going around maybe the back way and finding that wasn't the best way. Then you find other ways. And sometimes the best way was just the traditional way, the way we always did it. Sometimes the best way was a new way we've never done it. So you're going to have to deal with it. Every religious tradition does. And another thing, historically speaking, that you're going to have to deal with, that historically speaking, there's a tendency for the followers of the Acharya to become more fanatic than the Acharya after he leaves. Become great, Prabhupada said do this. And you become more fanatical about it. Prabhupada said book distribution. And so you knock it up one level. If you don't distribute books, you're going to Patala Loka. Well, he didn't say that, but, of course, I'm exaggerating. But historically, that's the tendency. When the Acharya leaves or the prophet leaves, many of the followers become more fanatical. And then it divides between the more liberal and the more fanatical because they see things differently. Human nature. You have liberal, you have conservative, traditionalist, modernist, younger generation, older generation. So these are all these things we have to deal with, and it can be problematic. Yes? Did I confuse you more? Actually, it would be great to do a course on this topic, and explain to you what we had to deal with, and we're still dealing with it today, right now. Look at 2000. I think it was 2002. A woman in our movement applied for a guru. It's 2018. That's 16 years later. And still, the discussion's going on. Both sides are going on. 16 years later. It's not, it's not an easy issue. Prabhupada said, all my sons and daughters, I want you to be guru. And people say, wait a minute, but traditionally women didn't do that. And, women have natural frailties that men don't have. Can we actually let them do it? And some people say, no, Prabhupada said. And some people say, no, it's not right. So, it seems like a straightforward issue. All my sons and daughters become guru. But Shastra says this, Shastra says that, and now it's 16 years later, it's still not resolved. Right? And we're dealing with Prabhupada disciples. So you may be more handicapped than we are because we at least were with Prabhupada and saw what he did, and we saw how he dealt with women. We saw these things personally. And so in some ways, you could even have more challenges than we had. So this is reality. We're going to have to deal with it. Yes? So what you said is true, but there are many things that surround that. What it means, Prabhupada in the center. I think, this is my personal opinion, but I think I was reading something about the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has, I think, 23 different orders. Like Jesuits are an order of the Catholic Church. They're the more scholarly order. And if you ever see nuns, not all the nuns wear the same color or the same style. It's because it's a different order, founded by a different person, slightly different ritual, slightly different morning program, slightly different, nuances of philosophy. And the Catholic Church started seeing, because we're all different, people look at the philosophy differently. And so these different orders were coming up. Just like you can see in our movement, right? Some gurus are very this way, and some gurus are very that way, and some are very in the middle, because we're individuals. So the way this one guru is preaching, it's very this way. And then you hear it class by another guru, and it's very that way, almost contradictory. Human nature. So obviously that was going on in the Catholic Church. And as these people become more powerful, then there's more of a thought process that this is what Prabhupada wanted. I could start a movement and say, Prabhupada wanted that all your daughters get married by the age of 11 at the latest. Because he said it. And I can back it up with Shastra. Right? Now you might think, wow, Mahatma Prabhu is really crazy. He's like, you want my daughter to get married at the age of 11? But it's illegal for her to drop out of school, at least in the West and so on. No, that's what Prabhupada wanted. It's right there. And if you analyze it, if you could create a culture that could support that, it's a good idea. It would prevent all the divorce, unwanted pregnancy, and so on. Of course, you have to train women to do that. And so someone will say, that's totally impractical in this age. Women are going to university. They don't think that way. It's against the law. But So what to do with these differing opinions? And and the person that girls should marry at 11, he's got a whole community where all the girls are marrying at 11, the boys are getting, by 16, and then, when the girl's 14, they live together, and then, by 35, she's a grandmother, and by 55, 50, she's a great-grandmother, and it's just the traditional way. And it's working, and they're living in this village, and they decide the next generation only speaks Sanskrit, and so that's the only language. So it's working, but is it working for the average IT graduate? No, maybe not, right? So obviously, you need everything, and the IT graduate, super liberal, we have to preach in a new way, don't wear tilak in public, people think you're crazy, people think ISKCONites are fanatics, wear a suit and tie, So he's taking it to the other extreme. But they're both getting success. And he's preaching in the corporate world in a suit and tie, and he's counseling corporate leaders. And they're, changing this whole part of India with their village preaching and taking care of cows, and the government's changing, So both things go on. So that's what the Catholic Church realized, that if we want to keep Prabhupada in the center, we're going to have to make room for everybody. And that's a huge challenge, right? Could you imagine if the GBC said, make room for the Ritviks? How hard that would be? That would be a huge challenge. But they're not going anywhere, as far as I can tell. Not soon, anyway, right? So these are challenges we have to face. Who can we make room for? How much room is there? You know, these are the decisions that I don't think our generation is going to make, but your generation is going to have to make them. And they're not easy decisions, right? The GBC, Prabhupada's disciples, 16 years can't make a decision whether a woman should initiate or not. That just shows you the complexity of, you know. Should we allow the Ritviks back in the movement? They wanted to come back. We won't allow them. Will that, in 20 years, will we rethink that? We think, no, it's a bad idea. Ritvik it's dying out. It's not a big thing. At least keep them within the fold. We'll have influence over them, you know. Madhu Pandit has gone back to Godhead, so that strong influence that, you know, all the leaders of that movement, they're not here anymore. Maybe we can invite them in. Maybe we'll have influence. You'll have to think about these things. The thing, it changes, right? India in 50 years. What's India in 50 years going to look like? I can give you my prediction, and I could be totally wrong, but I want to throw this out. This is based on our experience in America, and I think this is just wisdom that you need to put in your brain and consider. How it is now, how you're preaching now, the results you're getting now, do not think it's going to be that way in the future. Do not think in 50 years you can go to a university and get hundreds and hundreds of boys to come to your course and then move into your temples. Maybe that will happen, but I doubt it. Italy is an example. You can't, 300 devotees living in a temple, people joining all the time. Now you can't get a person to join. It's a different culture, it's a different time. We have this experience in America. What was happening in one generation, it doesn't happen the same way. You have to make all kinds of changes for it to happen. We still make devotees in America, not as much, and not in the same way. It doesn't work the same way. And some devotees are, yes, we need to make more brahmacharis and we have to preach. We preached that way in the 70s. We had hundreds, thousands of brahmacharis. Now you preach that way if you have 3 or 4 in a temple. It's like, wow, Prabhu, did you hear? That temple, they have 3 brahmacharis. That's like a new record, you know, in America. You know, it's like a huge thing. So the point is, we were preaching and people were joining. They were moving into the ashram in the 70s. It was a different culture. Now, it's not like that. So for you to go on preaching in the same way, thinking that these college students will always be the same, and they'll always be ready to be brahmacharis, and they're ready to drop out, and they'll be, you know, you're going to have, you know, college festivals with 4,000 students, Haribol wearing tilak. I would be very surprised, because what's happening in America, it's becoming so materialistic and so degraded. It's harder and harder to preach to people. It requires more sensitivity, more understanding, more adaptation. It requires more purity on our part. And my prediction is that your country will become more materialistic than America. And if that happens, yeah, it's already happened, right? But it hasn't, it's happened maybe in a more narrow, but when it starts to corrupt, you know, generations of religious families with that one generation, it's like it ends. Like wealthy families, generally 6 generations and they go into poverty. So how many generations now can there be religion with the way Kali Yuga is in Bollywood and social media? You know, I don't know if it's going to last 6. I would be surprised if it lasted, you know, 3. So it's something to consider. So in your preaching, at least this is, I'm not a business person, I'm not a Vaishya by nature, but I've read a little bit about business, and what they say is, if you want to have a successful business, you have to predict the future, and when those changes happen, you have to be the first one that's ready for it. Like, we know in 10 years, students are going to think this way. Or we know, like in America, people are into yoga and they're into kirtan. Really into yoga and kirtan. Millions of people are doing yoga and doing kirtan. Not with us doing kirtan, with other people. But we never knew that. And if 20 years ago we knew there's going to be a revolution in yoga and kirtan, we would have started training our devotees to be yoga teachers and giving them music lessons and forming groups and say, go out there and do kirtan because it's going to take off. But we didn't know that. So when it finally happened, we missed it. It was other people who were doing the kirtan and teaching the yoga, not us. So we have to consider where India is going to be. And it shifts like every 7 years, doesn't it? 7, 10 years is like drastically shift. Isn't it? I don't know exactly, but it's something. So 10 years from now, what's it going to be like preaching? What are the people going to be like? What are the 20-year-olds going to be like in 10 years from now? 20 years, what are the 20-year-olds going to be like? Oh my God. Will their brains even work? Will they even read books? Will they even understand anything other than dollars and sex? This is one of the problems we're facing now in preaching. People's brains aren't working because they're just thinking about what other people think of me, how do I make money, and do I look good to the opposite sex? That pretty much just, pulls the wires out of your brain, philosophically speaking, doesn't it? So now people are saying, why are you joining ISKCON? It's just stupid, wasting your time. What do they mean? You could be making money. You could be going to a movie and you're going to a kata. You could be making money and you're spending your time at the temple. That means the brains aren't working anymore, isn't it? So we have to understand these things. So, things are going to change. The way devotees think are going to change, not just non-devotees. The way devotees think now in America, the young devotees, is totally different than the way we think. And we have to adapt to it. They're millennials. Millennials do not think like we do. Millennials are democratic. They're not autocratic. If you tell a millennial, do this, they'll say, why? And you'll say, because I'm the temple president. And they'll say, but why should I do what you said? It doesn't make sense. They're not going to do it because you're the temple president. They're going to want to know why. And they're going to say, my dear temple president, I think there's a better way to do it. And you're like, no one ever talked back to me before. And say, yeah, we're millennials. We don't just accept it. And then you as a temple president, you're going to have to adjust to it and go, okay, to get him to do something, I have to sit down and have a meeting with him. And he has to tell me all his ideas. And you're going to start to realize his ideas, some of them are better because he understands the 20-year-olds. You're too old to understand them. It's a different, right? It's a different world. So we have to adjust to it. That's the reality that we experience in America. And if you're not ready for it, you're going to end up like we did. We missed it. We missed it. And America changed, and we didn't. And now we're realizing we have to change. We just got it too late. So that's my prediction. I could be wrong, but I just don't see people coming in throngs to ISKCON the way we're preaching now. It works now. Do it now. Keep it up. But be ready to understand you have to be adjusting on the side, developing programs to that point when people are going to want lifestyle change. They're not going to want philosophy. They won't care about deities anymore. They won't care about a lot of things. They're going to want to know, I got problems. Can your philosophy solve it? I can't even get along with my wife. What can you do to help me? That's where the world's going. That's where the preaching is tending to go. I mean, I'm sure you see that already. But, come on. Divorce is going to skyrocket. If we are counselors, we're going to connect to people through counseling, marriage counseling, because they're going to need it, right? That's what I'm doing now in America. We're developing a whole group of devotee counselors, and we're counseling people who've just been divorced because after divorce, they're questioning their whole life. They're completely open now to spirituality. They're looking at their life after divorce. So, and how many people are getting divorced? About 60%. So you have, and how many will be getting divorced in India? Well, since you're going to do better than America, 70%. And so 7 out of 10 people are going to be in misery. And if you're a counselor, a marriage divorce counselor, giving them Krishna conscious principles in disguise of some sort, wow, you're gonna have the people. But if you're just going to try to invite them to see, look at the deity, it's going to solve your divorce problems. No, it's going to require more than that. That's good, but that may come later, right? So these are things you have to think of. These are things that we're dealing with now. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hare Hare.